On Mother's Day, my son and his wife handed her mom the keys to a $39,200 Toyota Highlander and slipped me a $1,740 mortgage bill due Monday. There wasn't a gift for me, just the bill. That night, I wrote a 2-sentence note and left without saying a word. By morning, my phone was stacked with missed calls and long texts. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Loretta Staley. I am 68, and I live in Springfield, Missouri. On Mother's Day, I stood in my daughter-in-law's kitchen with a paper plate of fruit when the surprise started. Florence called everyone to the driveway. My son, Eric, lifted his phone. Florence's mother, Nadine Costa, smiled like she already knew. A big bow sat on the hood of a silver Toyota. Florence took Nadine's hand. "For everything you've done for me, Mom." She pressed a key fob into Nadine's palm. The headlights blinked. People cheered. I clapped because you clap when others clap, even if your stomach feels tight. The tag on the mirror said, "Certified used." Later, I opened the glove box and saw the sticker myself, $39,200. I am a mother-in-law, too, from the other branch of the tree. I live on a fixed income. Social Security sends $1,620 a month. A small annuity adds $280. I carry cash for groceries and keep a small notebook. It works if nothing big changes. Lately, big things kept changing. Everyone circled the car. Nadine ran her hand along the door. She is polite to me, and I am polite back. She said it has room for the grandkids. I said it was a sensible choice for winter roads. Florence hugged her mother. Eric said a few words about family. I stood near the mailbox so I wouldn't be in the way. That's when Florence stepped over and slipped a folded paper into my hand. She did it smooth, like passing a napkin. "Could you send this today?" she whispered. "It's due Monday." Then she kissed my cheek and went back to the crowd. I opened the fold. It was the mortgage bill. The amount due stared up, $1,740. The due date was Monday, the day after Mother's Day. My name isn't on the loan, but I had been helping. I told them it was temporary while they got settled. Somehow temporary stretched. I kept my face steady. People were still taking photos by the bumper. Someone called for a group shot with both mothers. I stepped in. The camera clicked. Nadine held the keys high. Florence leaned into her. Eric stood between them. I slid the paper into my sweater pocket. There is a kind of quiet that comes with age. It isn't anger. It's a line you draw because you know your limits. I felt that line arrive as sure as a seatbelt click. I looked at the car again. I looked at the bill. I thought about my bus pass and the way my grocery money sits in an envelope on the second shelf. I didn't make a scene. I didn't pull Eric aside. I didn't corner Florence. I nodded, put on my shoes, and decided I was done funding a house where I felt like a tenant. I said the words only to myself, "Enough." We went back inside for cheesecake. Nadine sat by the window, telling a story about her first car. Eric boxed leftovers. Florence set the key fobs on a saucer. I washed my plate and dried my hands on my handkerchief. My fixed income works because I keep my life simple. I pay Medicare, my phone, and the church pantry donation I pledged in January. I don't owe anyone, and I sleep at night. The mortgage bill in my pocket felt like a rock against that sleep. Boundaries become real when a bill sits in your sweater. Respect goes both ways in a family. I had given plenty already. Truly, before I left the kitchen, I asked one thing that didn't need an answer. "Is there gas in the tank?" Florence blinked. "Half," she said. "We'll fill it later." I nodded. I was done explaining my thoughts to people who had already decided theirs. Nadine hugged me at the door and thanked me for coming. I told her to enjoy her car and the good weather. I meant it. I walked down the hall to the guest room where I'd been staying. The room is small with a dresser and one chair. My suitcase lives under the bed. On the nightstand sits the notebook I've kept since I moved here. I sat and opened it. Last month's page held the notes I write so I don't forget. Bus pass due, dentist call, birthday card for an old friend. The mortgage line had a little check mark from April. I clicked my pen and drew a straight line under the word mortgage. One clean stroke. I closed the cover and set the pen on top. I stood and looked once at the photo of Eric as a boy holding a kite string, sunburned and proud. It still makes me smile. Loving your child is not the same as managing their bills. Love stays. Bills come due. In the front of the house, I heard laughter as Nadine tried the phone connection with the car. I tucked the mortgage bill flat and slid it into my purse. I checked my bus schedule and my keys. My shoes felt solid on the floor. I stepped back into the kitchen long enough to rinse my cup. Florence looked at me as if she expected a promise. I smiled and told her I was heading out to catch the bus. Eric offered me a slice of cheesecake to go. I thanked him and declined. On the sidewalk, the Highlander caught the light. It is a nice car. I hope it brings Nadine many easy miles. I turned toward the bus stop and lifted my chin to the sun. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I left without saying a word. I didn't always live in their guest room. That path started 2 summers after my husband died. We had a 2006 camper for lake weekends. It sat in storage. I kept paying the fee, thinking I'd use it again. That day never came. When Eric and Florence began house hunting in Greene County, I sold the camper for $22,000. I wiped my eyes in the parking lot and took the bus home with envelope in my purse. They were hopeful. They had some savings and a pre-approval that wasn't quite enough. I said I could help with the down payment. We sat at their table with coffee and a legal pad. I promised $18,000. I kept $4,000 as an emergency fund because a senior on Social Security needs a cushion. We shook hands. We made a second promise too. It wasn't written down, and that was my mistake. For 1 year only, I would help with the mortgage while they got started. We agreed on $600 a month, auto pay, no haggling. 1 year, then done, I said, just to get you started. Florence said back. Eric nodded. He was starting a new shift at a distribution center on the east side of Springfield, Missouri. Springfield made sense for me as well. My doctor's clinic sat on a bus line I already knew. I could change buses at the depot and reach my lab work without asking for a ride. Rent for seniors was lower here than in my old town, and the grocery stores ran good sales. They found a modest 3-bedroom with a yard. On move-in day, I brought sandwiches and iced tea. The guest room had a twin bed, 1 dresser, and a window facing a maple tree. I slid my suitcase under the frame and told myself it would be for a few months while they sorted things out. Our family arrangement was simple. I bought groceries twice a month, close to $120 a week when meat was on sale. I handled chores, laundry on Tuesdays, sweeping the porch on Saturdays, and dishes when I saw them. I wrote dates on a calendar for trash pickup. If a package came, I brought it in. Eric's job paid hourly with overtime in the busy season. Florence worked front desk at a dental office. Some weeks were full-time, some closer to 30 hours when the dentist traveled. Heat in winter, school supplies, tires for the older car. Things tug at a budget until it thins out. Month 1 went by, and the auto pay worked. The bank pinged me on the first business day, and I marked a check in my notebook. Month 2, the same. By the 4th payment, I could set my watch by it. 600 went out, the house stayed steady, and everyone breathed easier. I reminded them in month 6 that we were halfway through the year. I kept the guest room tidy, and my radio low. When they wanted space, I rolled my cart to the library and read magazines. I learned my bus routes. In month 11, Florence asked if I could cover the water bill that came in high. I paid it and wrote one time in my notebook. In month 12, the car needed brake pads. I bought groceries that week so they could handle the shop bill. None of it felt large on its own. Family helps. That's what I believed. Then month 13 rolled around. The auto pay still sent 600 without a hitch. I sat at the table with my notebook and paused. We had said 12 months. I brought it up after dinner. Florence said, "Only for now, just until Eric's overtime kicks in again." Eric added, "We're almost there." I didn't push. I hoped they were right and left the autopay running because stopping felt like pulling a fire alarm. By month 15, the habit had hardened. Every first of the month, 600 moved from my account to theirs. Groceries stayed, near 120 a week, unless there was a birthday. I still told myself this was temporary. I heard my own voice and wondered why it sounded uncertain. I saw the promise fading. A new rug in the living room, extra streaming subscriptions, 2 boxes from a beauty club on the porch in the same week. When I asked how work was going, the answer was always busy. Busy can mean many things, but it often means tired and short on time. I didn't judge. I just saw the pattern. By month 17, I wrote a question in my notebook. When does help become obligation? I underlined it twice. My emergency fund still sat at $4,000, and I guarded it like a fence. As a senior on Social Security, I can't rebuild savings fast if I drain it. The church pantry sometimes needed volunteers, and I gave time instead of extra money because hours were what I had. I never said out loud that sleeping in a guest room while you're buying half the groceries can feel odd. You want to be useful and not be in the way. You want respect more than thanks. You hope your grown child notices the effort without making you prove it. Most days were fine. Some days were thin and quiet. Looking back, I see the simple truth. We made a clear promise and then treated it like a suggestion. We all did. I didn't press early. They didn't plan an end. Month 13 came and went. Requests kept arriving. "It's just for now," they would say. I told myself it was temporary. The calendar said otherwise. The changes started small. A white sheet showed up on the fridge under a carrot magnet. House rules. The first line said, "Please label your items." The second said, "Use 1 mug per day." I picked up a marker and wrote Loretta's coffee on my tin. A week later, my phone lost the Wi-Fi. I asked Eric if the internet was down. He said they had changed the password for security and would text it. The text never came. I used my data to check the bus app and paid my own phone bill like always. I didn't want to lecture about security like I was a child. Parking moved next. I had been pulling in by the mailbox, so I wouldn't block the garage. One Saturday, Florence said the driveway finish should be protected and asked me to park on the street around the corner. I said sure and started hauling my bags the extra half block. It wasn't far, but I noticed the shift. More rules appeared on the sheet. Kitchen closed after 8 p.m. No scents in the laundry. Run the dryer only when full. I followed each one. I set an alarm for the kitchen time. I kept my dish towel on my bed to avoid questions. Living under other people's rules in a house you help support feels off. Florence praised her mother often. Nadine never asks for help. She raised me right. She never wastes anything. Sometimes the praise arrived while I was rinsing a bowl. I nodded. I don't compete with anybody's mother. Still, the message sat in the air. Nadine was the standard. As May crept closer, the plans to honor her became the center of the month. I kept my rhythms. 2 afternoons a week, I watched the kids so Eric could pick up a shift and Florence could run errands. 6 hours most weeks. We colored, read library books, and counted change. I bring my own bus pass, $25 a month, in a clear sleeve. If traffic ran late, I walked to the later stop and waved to the driver who knows my name. The fridge sheet returned one Sunday. Someone circled a line and wrote, "Remember, guests ask before using special items." The special item was a blue mixing bowl. I had washed and dried it after making cornbread. Later, a sticky note on my door said, "Please don't move the blue bowl." From then on, I left that bowl where they liked it. I can roll with quirks. What wore me down was the slide from family to housemate without the respect either role deserves. My place shrank into corners. 3rd shelf in the pantry, left side of the coat rack, 1 hook in the bathroom. When life is measured in hooks and labels, you understand why boundaries matter. On Sundays, I caught the 9:10 bus and sat in the back where I could stretch my knees. One morning, Florence said they had reserved front seats for Mother's Day. "For Mom," she said. "They're honoring the longest-standing mothers." I smiled and said it was a nice idea. She asked if I wanted to join them, then added the kids would sit with Nadine, so maybe I would prefer my usual seat. I said the back was fine. It was. The plan grew. Brunch at noon, Nadine's lemon cake, photos on the porch. Every detail centered on her, and I had no quarrel with that. She is kind to me. She shares recipes. But the more Florence said her mother never asks for help, the more I heard the flip side in my own life. I was the help. Eric brought home stories from the distribution center. He was tired from loading trucks. He said over time might open in summer. Florence talked about a possible raise at the dental office if they hit targets. I nodded. Money talk is air until someone writes a plan. Our plan, that my support was for 1 year, lived only in my head and a line in my notebook. That line felt faint. Small cuts kept coming. The pantry shelf got relabeled. The spare blanket I kept on the couch moved to my bed with a note, "We're keeping the living room tidy." A cousin stopped by and asked if I was boarding. I laughed and said no, but the word stuck. I set 2 quiet limits. First, I would not nag. Second, I would track. I began writing dates next to each favor. Pickups, extra grocery runs, babysitting beyond the schedule. I made no speeches. I made lines in a notebook. Patterns show up when you measure them. One evening, Florence came home cheerful and spoke again about Nadine. "Mom taught me to stand on my own," she said. "She never needed help with bills." I smiled. That's a good example. I didn't add the thought behind my teeth. Examples only work when we follow them. Near the end of April, I opened my notebook and wrote 6 words. 1 year means 1 year. I underlined it once and closed the cover. A senior on Social Security must set reasonable limits before limits set themselves. Springfield gave me reliable buses, a good library, and discount day at the store. It also gave me clarity. A family arrangement needs respect for elders as well as help from elders. I can offer time and a little money within a frame. I cannot be a silent line in someone else's budget forever. I didn't lecture. I folded laundry and babysat when asked. I answered when spoken to and kept my tone warm. Inside, though, I shifted from asking to measuring. I stopped arguing. I started counting. I sat at the small desk in the guest room with my notebook and a calculator. I would stop guessing and run real numbers. Guessing keeps you soft. Numbers make you honest. I dated the top of the page and wrote, "House help, full picture." I wanted clarity more than comfort, so I kept going. Income first. Social Security lands on the third Wednesday. Mine is $1,620. The little annuity adds $280 at the end of the month. Together, that is $1,900, steady but not stretchy. On a fixed income, you can't pretend money grows back. Every choice shows up somewhere else. Now, the regular costs. Medicare Part B takes its bite before the deposit ever hits. I don't argue with it. Healthcare is not a place to gamble. Prescriptions come next. After the discount card, mine average $85 a month. I give $40 to the church pantry because I said I would, and I keep my word. My phone rides a Lifeline plan for $30. The bus pass is $25 and pays for itself in doctor rides and groceries. Food, toiletries, laundry, rent, if and when I take my own place. I wrote. Then I listed what I have covered for this house. The big one is obvious, the mortgage support. At $600 a month, I have sent $10,800 since moving here. That is 18 months of help. Groceries live under a separate line. 2 trips a month, sales and coupons when I have them. By my tally, those bags add up to about $5,500 so far. That is real money for anyone, and it is most of a year's income for me. Next, I wrote the extras that slip through in busy weeks. The water bill I covered once, $92. School supplies for Florence's niece, $48. Take out the night Florence said she was too tired to cook, $56. None are crimes. All are clues. When small things repeat, they become big decisions no one admitted to making. I looked back at the income. $1,900 in before medicine and life. I looked at the outgo. Even without rent, I was moving like a person who already has a lease. The difference was that my rent was their mortgage. That truth sat heavy but simple. I turned to the spending choices. I could see from the couch. New subscriptions on the counter, a beauty box with 5 little bottles that look like gifts, and a fitness app on the TV that costs a monthly fee. I do not mind people having nice things. I like a cold soda and a good hand cream myself. The point is not judgment. The point is fit. If the budget can carry them, fine. If not, you choose. I wrote 2 columns, must and want. In must I put medicine, phone, bus, food, a small cushion for emergencies. In one I put gifts, takeout, extras for the grandkids, and anything with a monthly fee that could be paused. I set my own rule. If $1 leaves my hand, it should land in the must column until I am stable again. Then I checked the calendar. Mother's Day was coming. House rules had made me smaller, and the quiet comments about Nadine had made my role clear. I could keep paying and keep shrinking, or I could stop and deal with whatever followed. Both paths had a cost. Only one let me sleep. I wrote the sentence I had been avoiding. Final month is this month. I underlined it, then added no extensions. A senior on Social Security needs boundaries the way a porch needs railings. They aren't punishment. They are safety. I drafted a short message to Florence and Eric on a blank card. I won't be sending mortgage money after this month. Please plan accordingly. I kept the tone calm and factual. No blame. No history. I did not mention the 18 months or the grocery totals. I didn't add the extras or the subscriptions. Lists can sound like a fight. This wasn't a fight. It was a limit. I slid the card into my notebook instead of handing it over. I wanted to see one more cycle and make sure I meant it. I did not want to say anything I wouldn't do. I have learned that a soft promise is worse than a hard no. To steady myself, I ran a small budget as if I were already on my own. 1,900 inches. Subtract the medicine at 85, the tithe at 40, the phone at 30, the bus at 25, basic groceries for one, and a little for clothes and gifts. Even with rising prices, the math could work if I kept it simple. It would be close some months, but close is fine when you're deciding your own spending. I added a line for savings, $20 when possible. Tiny savings count. They prove you haven't given up on your future. My emergency fund of $4,000 would stay put unless a real emergency came. I promised myself I would protect it. When I looked up, the room felt different, though nothing had moved. The numbers had done their job. I was not angry. I was clear. Help had slipped into obligation in a house that treated me like a helper. I could love my family and still close the tap. I put the calculator away and made tea. On the notebook page, I wrote a final note in the margin: respect your limits. It wasn't about winning. It was about health, money, dignity, and a quiet life I could afford. Once I wrote down the numbers, the decision wrote itself. Mother's Day was bright and busy. Florence set out napkins with flowers and slid a ham into the oven. Nadine arrived in a blue blouse and hugged the neighbors. Eric checked his phone camera. I poured coffee and stayed to the side. Florence kept glancing at the driveway and whispering to Eric like they were timing a cue. After plates were filled, Florence tapped a spoon on a glass. "I want to say something," she began. She looked at her mother. "You raised me to stand on my own 2 feet. You taught me to work hard and be grateful. You never asked for anything." She reached under the table and brought up a small white box tied with ribbon. Nadine smiled, puzzled. Florence pressed the box into her hands. "Open it." Inside sat 2 key fobs and a folded card. Nadine read the card and put a hand to her mouth. Florence took her arm. "Come see," she said. Eric lifted his phone. A couple of neighbors followed us to the porch. The car waited at the curb, with a red bow like a ribbon on a package. Silver paint, clean lines, big enough for grandkids and groceries. The dealer's frame hugged the plate. Toyota Highlander, Eric said to his phone. Certified. People laughed when he added, "Brought to you by the best daughter." Nadine touched the hood and laughed through tears. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. Florence guided her to the driver's door and placed the key in her palm. Lights blinked. The dash came alive. Someone clapped. A neighbor whistled. Nadine settled into the seat and tried the mirror switch. Florence reached across and set the radio presets. I stood a step back and let the crowd enjoy the moment. Celebration belongs to the person in the seat. The talk swelled. Eric kept filming. Florence listed features. Lane assist, rear camera, 3rd row for holidays. Nadine asked about the payment. Florence lowered her voice, but not enough to hide the numbers. "We worked it out," she said. $612 a month for 48 months. She added, "It's fine." The number hung there. I heard it once and stored it. Neighbors posed for photos. Someone asked for a group shot of the family. I moved closer when they called me, then stepped back to make room. A couple walking a dog stopped and clapped. The bough tugged in the breeze. Someone shouted for Nadine to honk, and she did, a quick chirp that made everyone laugh and wave at the quiet Sunday street. I drifted toward the mailbox to stay out of the frame. Florence spotted me and walked over with a small smile. In her hand was a folded piece of paper. She covered the motion by straightening my cardigan and passed the paper in the same move. "We're counting on you," she whispered, eyes on the camera. "Due Monday." The words were simple. The message was not. The paper was thin from being handled. I didn't open it. I didn't need to see the number to know it was the mortgage bill. I felt the rectangle against my palm. the weight of an ask carried like a habit. I slid it into my purse with my bus card and a pen. "Congratulations, Nadine," I said when the circle loosened. "It's a fine car." I meant it. A safe, roomy vehicle matters when you have family to carry and winter to drive. Nadine squeezed my hands and asked if I wanted to sit in the passenger seat. I said I'd let her enjoy it first. She promised me the first trip to the grocery store. Back inside, the table filled again. Someone poured punch. Eric checked that the videos saved. The neighbors told stories about their first cars. Nadine served cake. I stood by the counter and listened. I kept my purse on my shoulder. The paper inside pressed a flat edge against the fabric. Florence floated between rooms. Our eyes met once. She did not mention the paper. I did not either. She spoke about the dealership and the test drive. Eric said the deal included an inspection and an extended warranty. I nodded when it fit. It was their moment. A little later, Florence said they should do a quick spin around the block before dinner cooled. Eric grabbed the keys. People followed them out for more pictures. The house grew quiet for a few minutes. I took those minutes for myself. I walked to the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed. I set my purse beside me and took out my notebook. A clean page waited. I wrote one sentence in the center. "I'm done." I underlined it once. I closed the cover and slid the notebook back. Calm can be a choice. When they returned, the room buzzed again. Nadine said the steering felt smooth. A neighbor praised the backup camera. Eric announced that he had captured the perfect clip for his page. Florence gathered the plates. I helped stack cups and rinse 2 pans. Before I left the kitchen, I checked my purse. The paper was still there, folded tight. Mortgage due, $1,740. I let the number land once, and then put it down. I had already chosen my path. My tone stayed warm. My steps stayed steady. I hugged Nadine and wished her many safe miles. Evenings settled. Guests drifted home. Eric carried the bow inside, so it wouldn't blow away. Florence walked me to the door with a thank you for helping tidy up. I told her she kept a nice house. She smiled and kissed my cheek. We did not speak about Monday. On the sidewalk, the Highlanders' windows mirrored the streetlights. I zipped my sweater and headed toward the bus stop at the corner. I had rides to plan, calls to make, and a simple list to follow. I didn't explain my choice that day. I acted on it. Truly, if a Mother's Day car comes with a bill for me, and you know that isn't right, back me up. Like it, share it, and hit subscribe. If you can't subscribe, leave your reason below. I want to hear it. I woke before the sun and sat up without turning on the lamp. My bag lay under the bed, half packed from habit. I pulled it out and set it on the chair. One suitcase, my small photo album, and the notebook I trust. I added a sweater, 2 blouses, jeans, socks, and my good shoes. I folded the album beside the clothes. It holds pictures that matter. A wedding day, a fishing trip, 2 baby faces with cake on their noses. I put the notebook on top, where I could reach it with one hand. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and tied my hair back. I checked the purse for my bus pass and ID. In the kitchen, the clock over the sink read 5:20. The house was quiet. I poured water into a travel cup and grabbed an apple. I moved like any other morning, slow and steady, no drama. This was a quiet exit, not a performance. At the table, I wrote a note on a plain sheet of paper. I kept it short and clear, 2 lines, no decoration. I won't be sending mortgage money anymore. Please don't ask. I read it twice, signed my name, and set it where a person reaching for coffee would see it. I didn't add why. I didn't list months or totals. A simple boundary stands better on its own legs. I wheeled the suitcase to the door, lifted it down the 2 steps, and eased it onto the porch. I closed the door without a click and walked toward the corner. The bus stop sat under a maple. Birds were starting up. My chest felt open for the first time in months. I wasn't mad. I was done. The bus came at 5:45. The driver nodded. I found a seat near the middle and watched familiar blocks slide by. Laundromat, diner, church. I switched routes downtown and rode north. A senior apartment complex sat off Kearny with a low sign and a small flag. I had visited once to ask questions and liked the manager's straight answers. The office opened at 8. I waited on a bench and read the brochure again. Month-to-month lease. Utilities included. Laundry room off the lobby and a garden strip out back. The rent was listed at $735. Not fancy, not shabby. Just a place sized for one person living within her means. Self-respect can look like a regular key on a plain ring. When the office door clicked, I went in with my ID, social security card, and bank information. The manager, a woman named Della, greeted me like an old friend. We sat across from each other while she pulled up the application. She asked if I wanted first floor or second. I asked for first, near the bus stop if possible. She nodded and pointed to a unit that had opened on Friday. We walked down the hall and stepped inside. A small living area, a galley kitchen, a bedroom big enough for the bed, and a dresser. Sunlight hit the corner where a chair could go. I pictured my photo album on a shelf and my notebook on the table. It fitted me without effort. I said yes. Back in the office, we went through numbers. First month's rent, a small deposit, and a $35 application fee. I signed where she showed me. I planned for this. It would trim my emergency fund, but I would still have a cushion. After the payments, I would keep $3,200 in the new account, enough to sleep at night. Before I left, I asked where the nearest credit union branch sat. Della circled one on a map 2 stops down the line. I thanked her and carried my suitcase to the elevator. The key turned smooth. I left the bag in the new bedroom and locked the door behind me. At the credit union, I opened a checking account in my own name. New card, new checks, and online banking set to send me alerts. I moved my funds, keeping the emergency money separate in a savings pocket labeled "Do Not Touch." I told the clerk I live on a fixed income and need simple tools. She set up a low balance text and showed me where to see it on my phone. Then came the part one had delayed, stopping the mortgage support. I opened the Zelle screen and saw the scheduled $600 waiting for the 1st of next month. I deleted the recurring transfer and confirmed the change. A small message popped up. This series has been canceled. I took a breath, not from fear, but from relief. Stopping payments was not an act against anyone. It was an act for my future. Next, I walked to the post office and rented a P.O. box. The clerk slid a key across the counter and a card to fill out. I paid the fee and wrote the new address in my notebook. Mail matters when you are settling yourself. A box keeps things private and tidy. By noon, I had a sandwich at the cafe near the bus stop and called the clinic to update my address. I gave the credit union and the insurance plan the new details. I set a note to visit the library and change my card tomorrow. I put the apartment office number in my phone. Small steps, each one closing a loop. My phone buzzed with messages as the day went on. I didn't open them. I moved the phone to silent and set it face down. I told myself I would give it 24 hours. People say words in the first hour they don't mean in the second. Breathing room is a gift you can give yourself and others. At the new place, I made the bed with clean sheets from the suitcase and wiped the counters with a cloth from my purse. I set the photo album on the shelf and placed the notebook on the table next to a pen. I put my bus pass where I'd see it in the morning. I poured a glass of water and stood at the window. The parking lot was quiet. A woman in a red sweater walked her small dog and waved. I waved back. I wrote 3 lines before supper. Rent, $735, utilities included. Emergency fund in new checking, $3,200. Mortgage support, ended. I drew a box around the last line and shaded it in. In the evening, I opened the apartment mailbox and smiled at the empty space. Tomorrow it would hold junk mail and catalogs. Today it held only air. I heated soup, washed the bowl, and put it in the cabinet. No fuss, no speeches, just a life resetting to fit me. I slept well. No footsteps outside my door. No labeled shelves. No bill on the counter with my name hovering over it. Morning would bring calls and choices. That was fine. The steps I took were clean and fair. There was nothing left to argue about. I left without a scene. If quiet boundaries matter to you, stand with me, tap like, share this video. I spent the next morning making things official. I called a small law office downtown and asked for a simple will update. The receptionist gave me a same-week slot with attorney Celia K. Barnes. I wrote the time in my notebook and rode the bus with a folder of papers in my tote. Ms. Barnes looked close to my age, plain-spoken. We sat at a table instead of across a big desk. "Tell me what you want, Miss Staley," she said. I told her I live simply and want my choices clear. No fuss for my son. No guessing games later. I asked for a short will that gives small items to family and sends the rest where it can do quiet good. We went line by line. Personal items to Eric, no debt. Cash gifts only if my savings still exist when the time comes. The main beneficiaries, the church pantry that feeds neighbors each week, and the Friends of the Library group that runs the book sale. I asked for plain wording. She nodded and typed. Then we set up transfer on death designations on my bank accounts, so things move without probate delays. The checking and the savings would list the church pantry and the library friends group as beneficiaries at set percentages. "You can change this later if you wish," she said. I liked the flexibility. Living simply includes leaving simply. She asked about health decisions. I chose Patsy O'Rourke, my neighbor at the senior complex, as my emergency contact for the clinic and the apartment office. Patsy is level-headed and lives 2 doors down. She knows my bus routes and where I keep my medication list. We wrote her number on the forms. I would tell her over tea that afternoon. We reviewed my credit card. Early on, I had added Eric and Florence as authorized users for grocery runs and pickups. It made sense then. It didn't now. Ms. Barnes advised I call the issuer and remove both users today, then cut up the extra cards. Not because anyone is a villain, she said, but because clean lines prevent confusion. I agreed. She printed the draft will and read it aloud, so I could hear how it sounded. No big words for show. Just names, percentages, and plain wishes. I signed, initialed, and watched the witnesses sign. The fee came to $225 flat. I paid without regret. Clear papers save hard feelings later. At the credit union, I added the new transfer on death names to my accounts. The clerk stamped the forms and handed me copies in a sleeve. I called the credit card company from a chair by the window and asked to remove both authorized users. The agent read a short script, confirmed the change, and said new cards would arrive for me alone. I thanked her and put the old cards in my purse to cut that night. Back at the complex, I knocked on Patsy's door. She opened it with her usual smile and a mug in hand. I told her I had picked her as my emergency contact. "Only if you're willing," I added. She said yes on the spot and wrote her cell on my sticky note twice in case the ink smudged. We talked about the garden club a while. I felt lighter knowing one person nearby could answer a call if needed. Then I wrote the message to Eric and Florence that I had drafted and held back. I kept it short, calm, and practical. Hi, I'm safe and getting settled. I will not send mortgage money anymore. If you need a bridge, I can offer up to $900 total across the next 90 days, but only if you both attend the free budgeting sessions at church and pause non-essentials. Please bring proof from the class coordinator and a simple written budget. No cash until then. Love, Mom. I looked at the words and checked my own heart. The conditions were reasonable. I wasn't paying for subscriptions or takeout anymore. I would support a plan that helped them stand on their feet. Reasonable conditions. Help with purpose. I pressed send. The replies arrived fast and long. Eric wrote first. He said they were stressed, that things had snowballed, and that he didn't want to fight. He asked if the bridge could be larger the first month. Florence sent paragraphs about intentions, busy schedules, and the car being for family safety. She said the budgeting class felt judgy. She asked if we could skip it and just promised to do better. I read both messages slowly and set the phone down. I made tea and gave it 10 minutes. Then I answered, "Thank you for writing. My offer stands as written, up to $900 total over 90 days after you attend the free budgeting sessions and show me a basic plan. No cash until I see that. If you'd like, I will sit beside you in class. This is not punishment. It is a way forward. Love, Mom." A few more messages followed, some hopeful, some sharp around the edges. I didn't match the sharp parts. I repeated the terms word for word and wished them a good night. Boundaries work best when you hold them in the same tone every time. Before bed, I put the signed will and TOD copies in a folder, wrote legal on the tab, and placed it in my drawer. I cut the extra credit cards and dropped the pieces into different trash bags. I saved Patsy's number in my favorites list and labeled it Neighbor Emergency. I slept not because everything was fixed, but because the paper now matched my life. My choices were on record. Beneficiaries named, accounts tidy, contacts current, and help offered with clear steps. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was finally protecting myself. 2 weeks passed before I saw them. I had just come out of Harbor Market with bread and oranges when the silver Highlander pulled in by the cart rack. Florence stepped out first. Eric followed. They walked toward me. "Mom, can we talk?" Eric asked. "We can," I said. "Let's keep it short." We stood near the planter by the door. Florence folded her arms. "This has gotten hard," she said. "The car payment is more than we thought after the fees. It's $612 a month. Gas is higher too, $70 to fill up." She glanced away. "We didn't plan on all of it hitting at once." Eric added, "The mortgage is tight. We're one payment behind. They added a late fee, $78. We have to catch up next week." He looked at the ground. "Your family." I set my bag down. "I hear you," I said, "and I told you my line. Family doesn't hand me a mortgage bill the same day they buy a car. I'm not your lender." Florence flushed. "It was a gift for my mother. It mattered." "I'm not arguing about your gift," I said. "I'm telling you what I will and won't do. I will not send mortgage money anymore. That part is finished." Eric rubbed his jaw. "Could you help this once? We'll catch up after." "I've already made my offer," I said. "Up to $900 total across 90 days. Only after you both attend the free budget class at church and pause non-essentials. Bring proof from the coordinator and a simple written plan. No cash until then. I will sit beside you in class if you want. It's on Saturday at 10. Florence shook her head. We don't want church people in our business. The class is numbers and habits. I said, no one asks for personal stories. They show you how to plan a month, so surprises don't run your life. It's free. It takes 2 hours. I kept my voice level. My help now follows a plan. Eric sighed. We're working. I've got extra hours coming. He lowered his voice. The late fee will keep stacking. 78 this month. Another next month if we slip again. It snowballs. I know how snowballs work, I said. That's why plans matter. If you two can make a plan and follow it, I will bridge you while you do. If not, you'll need different choices about spending or the house. Florence stared at the window. So you're okay watching us drown? I'm not okay with anyone drowning, I said. I'm also not throwing my savings in the water because you won't grab the rope. The rope is the class and a budget. It's not a punishment. It's a tool. Eric nodded once, like he understood even if he didn't like it. Could we get the bridge up front and do the class later? No, I said. Class first, proof first, plan first. Then I'll help. You know the terms. Florence's voice went sharp. You lived under our roof. And I paid to help keep it up, I said. That season ended. I left with respect. I'm asking for respect back. A boy pointed at the Highlander and told his dad he wanted one. The moment felt ordinary. That helped me keep my place. Eric tried again. What if we sell a few things, skip the class, and you still help? We could send receipts. I don't need receipts, I said. I need you to learn a system that lasts longer than a week. That's what the class gives you. Saturday at 10. I'll save a seat. Florence blew out a breath. I can't sit through someone telling me to stop lattes. Then you'll hear about fixed costs, sinking funds, and the calendar. I said, it's not about lattes. It's about seeing the month before it arrives. Eric looked at Florence. We could try one session. She shook her head. I have a hair appointment. You can reschedule hair. I said, you can't reschedule a payment once it's late. It's your call. Eric gripped the cart rack. I don't want to fight. We're not fighting, I said. We're stating terms. Mine are clear. Yours are yours. He nodded. Florence didn't move. I took a step toward the bus stop. Text me if you decide to come Saturday, I said. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume no. Florence called after me. If we lose the house, will you feel good about this? No, I said, turning back. I'll feel sad, but I won't feel responsible. You picked a car and a budget that can't hold both. You can still change that. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Eric said, gas is killing us. 70 to fill it, sometimes more. Then drive less for a while. I said, combine trips. Sell the car if you must. People sell cars. People move. People adjust. No one spoke. A bus slowed at the corner and hissed. I lifted my hand. Eric said, soft, you won't bend. I already bent for 18 months. I said, this is me straight. Florence looked past me at the bus. We'll figure something out. I hope you do, I said. I want good for you. I walked to the stop and climbed aboard. I tapped my pass and found a seat by the window. The Highlander glinted. They stood by the cart rack with their heads close. The bus pulled away. I rested my bag on my lap and watched the market fade. Shops, a park, and mailboxes slid by. I had said what I meant and nothing extra. Saturday's class meets in the church hall on Cherry Street. If they come, I'll sit in the front row and sign their sheet. I drew one small line. I kept it. Saying no in a parking lot is harder than it sounds. If you've been there, click like, share this with someone who needs courage, and subscribe so more women see it. If you're choosing not to subscribe, tell me why, be honest. 2 months passed quietly. I kept my phone on normal and answered with short messages when needed. One afternoon, Eric sent a link. Florence had listed the Highlander online with clean photos and a short description. The price was hopeful at first. Then a week later, I saw a new post at a lower number. The caption said, "Ready to sell, serious offers only." I didn't reply with advice. They were doing the hard part themselves. By the end of the month, a young couple from across town bought it. Florence kept the older sedan. They switched to one car and started planning rides instead of winging it. Gas dropped from a worry to a line on a calendar. I heard bits and pieces after that. Eric texted that the mortgage had caught up once, then slipped again. They met with a listing agent before any notice went out. "We're trying to get ahead," he wrote. The agent suggested they start high for a week to test interest, then reduce by $14,000 to get real offers. The reduction came fast. I scrolled past the photos of the kitchen and the yard and the sunny front room. I set the phone down and went for a walk. 3 months later, a moving truck took half the furniture. A final text arrived from Eric with a new address south of town. They had found a smaller rental with a short commute to his job. "We'll be okay," he added. I believed him. A smaller place can save a life you can afford. Letting go feels heavy, and then it feels like a door. While they shifted, I kept my rhythm. Morning coffee with neighbors in the community room. Patsy brings crossword pages and laughs at my guesses. On Wednesdays, I join chair yoga and learn how to stand up slower and steadier. On Fridays, I volunteer at the library book sale, sorting paperbacks and pointing folks to the mysteries. I like putting a good story in the right hands. My budget holds now. I wrote it clean and simple on one page. Social Security and the annuity land when they land. Rent is $735 with utilities included. Phone is $30. Prescriptions average $85. Bus pass is $25. The pantry donation is $40 like I promised. Groceries sit where they sit, and I cook more beans than before. Most months, I end with $120 left for savings. I circle that number in green ink because it encourages me. It's not a fortune. It's a cushion. A small cushion keeps you from hitting the floor. One Saturday, I rode past their old street to visit a friend nearby. The maple by the mailbox rustled like always. A different car sat in the drive. A new couple waved at a neighbor. I kept riding. Streets change. People change. We let them. Eric and I meet for coffee every other week. He talks about work and the little victories. One day he said the rental's smaller kitchen makes it easier to keep clean. Another day he mentioned Florence had started packing lunches. We keep the conversation on normal life. We listen more than we fix. That is progress for both of us. Florence and I text polite updates. She sends pictures of the kids at school events. I send thumbs up and short notes. We haven't discussed budgets or decisions since the parking lot. We don't pick at old threads. That is a kindness too. At home, I tend small things. I set birthdays on my calendar and buy stamps in advance. I keep a list for the garden club sale because there's a plot out back for tomatoes and zinnias. I fix loose buttons right away. Small order in a small space makes a steady day. One evening I sat at my kitchen table with the window open and my old notebook laid flat. I turned to a fresh page and wrote a new title in neat letters, My Own Life. Under it I listed 4 lines, rent, bus pass, garden club, birthdays. I added savings, $120 target, in the margin. I closed the book and felt the table stop wobbling under my hand. That's how it felt inside me too. Some nights, I think about that Mother's Day. A car with a bow, a bill folded into my palm. I'm not angry about it now. I see it as a clear picture of a season ending. I stepped off the old path and onto my own. It wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. People ask me if I regret leaving without a big talk. I don't. Talking had been done. Promises had been made and stretched thin. Action was the only thing left. A quiet exit kept the peace where words would have raised the heat. Time has proved that out. If you are listening and you're where I was, I can tell you what helped me. Write your numbers. Make one plan you can live with. Keep your tone even. Say your line once, and then live it. Every month you hold that line, your life gets steadier. Respect isn't loud. It's consistent. I love my son. I wish them well. I'm not the mortgage. That sentence frees me every time I say it. It lets me show up as a mother, not a bank. It lets me be generous in ways that fit my means. It lets me be present without being used. That is the balance I needed. Thank you for staying with me to the end. If this story gave you something useful, please like this video so other folks can find it. Share it with a friend who might need a calm voice. Subscribe if you want more simple, real stories about living within means, setting family boundaries, and keeping dignity as we age. And now I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever drawn a line and kept it? Would you have paid the mortgage after that Mother's Day? Tell me in the comments. Your stories help the next person press play on the next video.